We arrived in Switzerland via the Zurich airport. From there, we took the train to our hotel in our base town of Stans in the Lucerne area. From Stans, we boarded a bus to take us to the lakeside town of Beckenried. Beckenried is on Lake Weerwald-Stadersee, a mouthful for English speakers, and more commonly called Lake Lucerne. From Beckenried, we boarded a boat for Vitznau, another charming lakeside town with a few hotels, cafes, and plenty of Swiss charm. From Vitznau, we took the funicular up Mount Rigi to the top at Rigi Kulm. Here we got our first beautiful views of the Swiss landscape from above. Not to mention a few cows and sheep. Before we knew it, it was getting late, so we boarded the funicular once more and went down to Vitznau to enjoy the orange hues of the setting sun while we waited for our boat to take us on the final leg of our journey for the day. We boarded a paddle wheel boat headed to Lucerne and enjoyed a delicious meal along the journey in the second-class dining room. Finally, we ended up in Lucerne and took a nighttime stroll to experience a few of her iconic sights. Flughafen Zurich is the largest airport of Switzerland. This is where most intercontinental flights arrive, and so did we. The train station is conveniently located at the airport. It's just a 10-minute train ride to Zurich's main station. Beckenried was the ideal starting point for our excursions around Lake Lucerne. Regular boats on the lake make it easy to reach popular tourist destinations in the region, including the majestic Mount Rigi on the opposite shore of the lake. It is just a half-hour's journey on board the Vitznau Rigi Railway to reach Rigi Kulm at 1,798 meters. When the world's first rack and pinion railway was opened in 1871, Vitznau became an important interim destination for travelers who, on arrival by steamship from Lucerne, traveled to the rack railway. A breathtaking panoramic view across the Alps of 13 lakes and over the entire Swiss Meadowland as far as Germany and France can be seen from the summit of Rigi. The Alpine cheese made from the best milk from Rigi's cows is a very special treat, carefully made by hand and often only available seasonally. After returning to Vitznau, we awaited our ride to Lucerne on an authentic, turn-of-the-century historic paddle steamer named Underwalten. Once on board, we decided to dine. Our waitstaff was very friendly and served us a delicious meal, and we enjoyed getting to see the inner workings of the steamship and the city of Lucerne from the water by night. Once in Lucerne, we enjoyed seeing her iconic sights. Some of those included Lucerne's Jesuit church, the first large Baroque church built in Switzerland north of the Alps. Another of her famous sights, Chapel Bridge, is a wooden pedestrian bridge that spans the River Russ. Originally built in 1333, it's one of the oldest bridges in Europe, renowned for its 17th century triangular paintings that depict history and legends of Lucerne. We started off our morning with a light breakfast from our local bakery. Then it was off to the Stanserhorn to board a funicular to view this beautiful region from another of her famous lookouts. At the Stanserhorn, we enjoyed a clear day with incredible views, including our first view of the Swiss glaciers in the Jungfraujoch. After finishing our morning at the Stanserhorn, we headed to Alpnachstad, one of two transportation access points to Mount Pilatus. We took the funicular up Mount Pilatus to the summit at Pilatus Kulm. Here we enjoyed spectacular views on an uncommonly clear day, or so we were told. We next took a series of gondolas down to Lucerne. On the way, we saw more pristine natural beauty, ending with views of a castle and chalets, and one more evening enjoying the beauty of Lucerne with a bit of daylight this time. We stayed in Stans, the capital of the canton of Nidwalden. We decided to take a look around the town before heading up to the Stanserhorn. The parish church, St. Peter's and Paul's, was built in the 1640s by the architect Jacob Berger. The church is constructed in an early Baroque style. Stans is one of the oldest settlements in the entire Nidwalden Valley. The first traces of human settlement date to the 2nd century BC. More recently, Stans was brutally punished by Napoleon when it refused to endorse his puppet state government over Switzerland known as the Helvetic Republic. In 1798, French troops stormed Stans with devastating effects. Today, Stans is a vibrant small town, connected by rail and by bus, with an almost exclusively German-speaking population. The local mountain, the Stanserhorn, is also a tourist hotspot. It is accessible via one of the oldest mountain railways in Switzerland, the Stanserhornbahn, built in 1893, in conjunction with a more recently constructed aerial cable car segment. The new cable car system allows guests to enjoy an open-air upper deck featuring great views all the way to the top of Mount Stanserhorn. The cable car also has a lower deck, but everyone wants to be up above. Once at the top, the lookouts are stunning, with glorious views of Lake Lucerne and its surroundings. From here, we got our first glimpses of the Swiss glaciers in the Bernese Oberland. Mount Pilatus looms large, as though it's just a stone's throw away. There are short hiking trails around the peak of the Stanserhorn, and hikers will frequently see chamois from the trail, in addition to breathtakingly scenic vistas. Inside and outside, dining is available, and it's hard to beat the views. Then it's back to the cable car and down the mountain. And once more, we'll use the train system to get to the next part of our adventure. A medieval legend tells of dragons with mystical powers living on the mountains. A chronicle from 1619 reads, "As I was contemplating the serene sky by night, I saw a very bright dragon with flapping wings go from a cave in a great rock in the mount called Pilatus toward another cave known as Flue on the opposite side of the lake." Sadly, transport by dragon was not available to us. However, commissioned in 1889 with a grade of up to 48%, Pilatusbahn is the steepest cogwheel railway in the world. It takes about 30 minutes to make its way from Alpnachstad to the summit at Pilatus Kulm, with some pretty impressive views along the way. novice to rigorous walking and hiking possibilities abound. But you don't need to expend much effort to get some pretty incredible views. If you cannot bear to leave these sites, you can stay overnight at one of the hotels that are located here at the top. And yes, there are more than one. I wish we had stayed longer at the summit, but there was a special experience I wanted to have on the way toward Lucerne at the next gondola stop down the mountain. I'd been fantasizing for months about riding the Pfinstegg Rodelbahn, the longest Rodelbahn in Switzerland. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Pilatus and the stops along the way are very popular destinations. And on this day, many people wanted to go up, and we had a 2-hour wait to get on a funicular. Then, although we reached Pfinstegg an hour before the Rodelbahn closing time, we learned that they had stopped selling tickets. Why? Because the current riders had bought tickets that meant they'd be riding non-stop until closing time. We put on our best faces for our selfies on the long ride down to Lucerne, but I was feeling pretty disappointed about now. And I knew that tomorrow we'd be leaving the Lake Lucerne area, and this experience was not going to happen for us. The lesson learned is that even though I carefully looked at the transportation schedules and the opening and closing times for events, heavy usage of transportation and other attractions by other travelers may mean your careful plans don't work out. So, if something is important to you, leave tons of extra time to do it and be willing to sacrifice other activities. A valuable lesson I put to use on the remaining days of my travel, and hopefully, a valuable lesson you learned from me. We reached Lucerne in the early evening, allowing us to see the city with daylight and enjoy our second and last evening meal in the area at a restaurant along the banks of the River Russ. It was time to change our base location, so we packed our bags and left the Lake Lucerne area for the Berner Oberland region of Switzerland. We traveled by train to Lautterbrunnen, which means loud water. This is one of the many waterfalls visible in the valley. From Lautterbrunnen, we took a gondola up to Grindlewald. And from here we boarded another small train to take us the rest of the way to Murren. Murren is a small town that served as an excellent base for the next leg of our trip. You'll see some of the reasons why in just a bit. We had easy access to the Lautterbrunnen via a pair of gondolas that leave from Murren. The Lautterbrunnen gives stunning views, all the way to Mont Blanc in France. We were also close to Grindlewald and neighboring Pfinstegg, two tourists' favorite locations, and home to a very enjoyable Rodelbahn. From Murren, we could take a leisurely hike, all downhill on a paved path to Gimmelwald. a sleepy and charming little town that made Murren look like a metropolis. We also went down to the Lautterbrunnen Valley to see Trummelbeck Falls, an incredible sight with 10 waterfalls internal to the mountain and some that extend outside the mountain. We spent our last and most strenuous day hiking above Almendhubel. I have to say this was my favorite day. We arrived at our hotel in Murren on a dreary, rainy afternoon. The town had its charms, even in less than ideal weather. The locals were competing in running and biking events. Children to elderly folks were pedaling in the rain and running their way through the town. Since it was raining, we decided to go to the valley floor and see Lautterbrunnen and some of its sights. We did enjoy a few glimpses of sunshine on the way. Lautterbrunnen is situated in one of the most impressive trough valleys of the Alps, between gigantic rock faces and mountain peaks. The name Lautterbrunnen is thought to mean loud waters or possibly many fountains. Water is definitely a key feature here. There are 72 waterfalls in the Lautterbrunnen Valley, the most visible and famous being Starbuck Falls, plunging 300 meters from an overhanging rock face. These falls are among the highest free-falling waterfalls in Europe. J.R.R. Tolkien hiked from Interlaken to the Lautterbrunnen Valley while on a trip to the continent in 1911. The landscape of the valley later provided the concept and pictorial model for his sketches in watercolors of the victorious valley of Rivendell. We returned to Murren, enjoying spotty bits of sunshine. And then later, a delicious evening meal featuring some local favorites. In 1969, Ian Fleming's James Bond was brought to Switzerland in the movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The name Piz Gloria originated in Ian Fleming's novel, where it is the mountaintop hideout of the villain. Piz means peak or top in the Swiss national language of Romance. Switzerland actually has 4 national languages. The others include German, French, and Italian. Romance is the least widely spoken. The Piz Gloria contains a small James Bond museum and plenty of James Bond props to include in your tourist photos. In reality, the Piz Gloria is not a private hideout, but a public restaurant located on the peak or Piz of the Schilthorn at over 2,900 meters above sea level in the Bernese Alps. The Schilthorn lies above the village of Murren, where you can catch a cable car to its summit. The summit has panoramic views which span the mountains of central Switzerland and even its neighboring countries. Europe's highest peak, Mont Blanc in France, is also just visible. A little below the Schilthorn is Berg. Berg has a thrill walk that allows tourists to see the mountains suspended from the rock face on a cantilevered set of stairs and walkways. It's mystical in the mist, and a bit scary when that mist thins and you see how high you really are. But in reality, it's best enjoyed on a clear, crisp day. Definitely not for those who suffer from vertigo. It's quite a thrill to walk on the walkway and look down through the glass floor at nothing below your feet, and to see the backs of birds flying below you. In the early 1900s, daredevil English tourists practiced a variety of up-and-coming winter sports in and around Murren, and bobsledding was particularly popular. A run had been built from the Almendhubel to Murren. However, the craze came to an abrupt halt in 1930 when an accident left one man dead and several seriously injured. The bobsled run was reactivated only once more, in the winter of 1968-69, as a film location in that James Bond movie previously mentioned on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Since the bobsled run in Murren no longer exists, and it was summer, to finish our Swiss Bond experience, we went to Pfinstegg to ride the 736-meter-long Rodelbahn. The scenery is beautiful, and the curves and the dips in the track are exciting, with top speeds reaching 40 kilometers per hour. It is an adrenaline rush. I only wish it lasted longer. The small, idyllic mountain village of Gimmelwald is situated at 1,400 meters above sea level, at the very end of the Lautterbrunnen Valley. Gimmelwald, like Murren, has no road connection to the main valley. In 1965, it finally became more accessible with the introduction of the Stanserhorn cable car. The cable car system is the only means of public transportation to and from the village. Paragliders are a common sight in the area. If you want an easy, winding, all downhill walk with magnificent views, then a stroll from Murren to Gimmelwald is ideal for you. Those paragliders are non-stop, and I kid you not, you can purchase a seat on the lap of a trained paraglider to experience the rush with no previous training. It is considered quite safe and has an extremely low accident history. Gimmelwald has largely retained its character as a mountain farming village. This is why it is so popular with travelers. Overnight accommodation is provided by 3 establishments, and there are some holiday apartments available too. The fate Gimmelwald faces is similar to that of many small mountain villages. Historically, the village population increased until the middle of the 20th century, but since then it has declined. In the 50s, the village had over 200 inhabitants. Today, less than 90. Another deafening natural phenomenon in the Lautterbrunnen Valley are the Trümmelbeck Falls in the Black Monk Mountain, hidden behind mighty rock faces. Up to 20,000 liters of water per second cascade over the 10 glacier falls from a total height of about 200 meters. These falls can only be seen in summer, partly by using an ascensor lift, which is kind of like an elevator that goes up at a slant, in conjunction with a series of stairs. It is our final day in Murren. We could spend money on an activity, or we could be cheapskates and go for a hike. We decided to be cheapskates, and boy would it have a great payoff. From our hotel, we could see the Almendhubel funicular getting started and taking its first riders up the slope. We'd mostly seen Murren in cloud cover and downright rain. We were going to have the most splendid day. It was off to a great start, and we saw our Murren in the bright sunlight as the morning progressed. The Allmendhubel Bahn was brought into service in 1912. It was soon used by many tourists, mountain hikers, and winter skiers. Murren, at 1,600 meters, gets smaller and smaller as we climb to Allmendhubel at 1,900 meters. Upon reaching Allmendhubel, we saw a cute child's park, and children were taking advantage of it. There is also a nice showing of alpine plants, complete with labels so you know what you're looking at. From Allmendhubel, we had some awesome natural views. And some of the best views were of our celebrity mountains of the day, Monk, Eiger, and Jungfrau. A legend says that Monk is between the Jungfrau, or Virgin, on the right, protecting her from the nearby Eiger, or Ogre, on the left. It's a good story, but looking at the three mountains, Jungfrau appears by far the biggest. She stands at 4,158 meters and is in no need of protection from either of the two smaller mountains. While the legend of the mountains is fun, there could be other reasons for the names. Jungfrau may have been named after the nuns of the convent that once took their cows to pasture at the foot of the mountains. It was time for us to trek higher. As we did, we saw a variety of alpine flora and fauna. And more views of our gorgeous mountains. I ended up hiking another 300 meters above Allmendhubel for some amazing and solitary time with my gorgeous natural surroundings and views of those three spectacular mountains. The Eiger, and Eiger may be from Latin acer, meaning sharp, or Old German ger, meaning spear. No one knows for sure. However, Eiger is well known for its killer north face. The movie North Face, released in 2008, tells the story of two German climbers from the 1930s involved in a competition to climb that most dangerous of rock faces in the Alps, and the tragedy that occurred doing so. After doing so many activities with crowds and chatter, this was a welcome change.
It's just me and no one on the trail for as far as I can see.
Monk is in the middle of the other two mountains, in both position and height. You can remember that with the catchphrase, "Monkey in the middle." Is Monk named after monks, horses, or something else? Again, it's hard to say. Monk is the most climbed of the three peaks, partly because it has easy access from the Jungfrau Joch rail station. The panoramic view is overwhelming, and it's hard to imagine the scale. The cows are willing to share their water with hikers. We decided to go find where they were hiding. Found one! Eventually, we found lots of them. And before we knew it, we were right among them. It's almost as hard to go down these steep slopes as it is to go up them. We get to take the low road. After a long, hot day on our feet, we have our last chance to have an evening meal in Murren, with Swiss fondue on the once again chilly streets. On to the final leg of our Swiss journey. We were heading to the French side of Switzerland to enjoy a little cheese and a little chocolate. Our journey took us first to Gruyeres, home to the famous cheese, but also home to another regional treat, meringues with crème de Gruyère. We dropped off our bags in Bulle to spend the night at a hotel there. From our hotel, we could see the city's medieval Bayeville castle. Then we boarded the train once more to tour the Maison Cahier factory in Broc-Fabrique. We enjoyed an educational factory tour, ending with a tasting of Cahier confections. In 2010, the Maison Caillé Visitor Center opened, allowing guests to experience the history and production of Caillé chocolate. I do need to credit them for bringing all your senses to use on this tour. Back in 1911, Alexander Louis Caillé developed a completely new process, including condensed milk in his formula for making his milk chocolate, and it is still used today. Then it was off to Gruyeres. Gruyeres is first mentioned in the early 1100s as de Gruyeres. The town grew up beneath the castle, which the Count of Gruyere had built on the hilltop to control the upper Sonnenwald Valley. By the end of the 1100s, it was a thriving market town with a central street and city walls. Here in Gruyere, you will find the H.R. Geiger Museum. This museum has the largest permanent collection of works by the Swiss surrealist artist H.R. Geiger, who famously created the monsters for the movie Aliens and its sequel. The traditional restaurants here in Gruyere serve the famous specialties of the region, including fondues, roasties, and soupe de chalet. The town has an evening charm you won't want to miss. At La Maison de Gruyere, visitors are welcome to watch the cheese-making process live, and then taste the cheese at the end. The area is also famous for meringues with La Gruyere double cream. There's only 2 ingredients in the meringues, egg whites and sugar, but combined with the double cream, boy are they delicious. In medieval times, the Count Rudolph III allowed the villages to build St. Theodulf's Church. When it was dedicated in 1254, it was the parish church of the new Gruyeres parish. The Counts of Gruyeres were buried under the altar of St. Michael's in the church. It was mostly destroyed in the 1670s and then again in 1856. The renovated church was consecrated in 1860, and that is what we see today. "19 counts ruled during the period between the 11th and 16th centuries. However, walls were not enough to keep the city under their control. The last count, Michel, had been in financial trouble most of his life and ended up in bankruptcy in 1554. His creditors from the canton of Freiburg and Bern shared his earldom between them. And like Count Michel, we needed to say our goodbyes to Gruyere. Click the round button and subscribe to my channel. And tell me in the comments below, what do you find helpful in a travel log? Thanks for watching.